Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, and it's time to talk about high explosives and fires and my opinion on their effects in the game. And for those of you who are wondering where this is coming from, basically about a month ago, NoZoup for You on his YouTube channel posted a video in which he brings up his opinion about the over-proliferation of high explosive in World of Warships, and at the end he asks everyone if he believes that this is a problem. And to be honest with you, yes I do, Zoop, so let's discuss why. And to give you an idea, I've noticed since the beginning of this game, there has been kind of this ebb and flow of HE to AP to HE to AP to HE again, where the favored ammo type kind of cycles. And right now we are in a very heavy, high explosive, spam intensive gameplay style. And the recent Royal Navy battleship line is probably the most egregious example of a line that is blatantly designed to exploit that tactic. With its favorable high explosive penetration, good HE alpha, and with really few downsides to, balance that out. They're not even truthfully glass cannons with their ability to heal all that stuff back. So let's examine some arguments about the reasons why I feel that high explosive spam is a detriment to this game overall. Let's get this one right out of the way. It's the realism argument, and we're going to briefly touch on it. Personally, I think this is a horrible and weak argument against HE proliferation in this game for a multitude of reasons. While it's true that there are several notable examples of ships shooting high explosive ammunition at other combat ships, the overwhelming majority of warship versus warship engagements took place using either armor-piercing or a semi-armor-piercing round. Outside of destroyer caliber guns and Royal Navy cruiser guns, AP was king for everything that wasn't shore engagement or shooting at soft targets like, transports and stuff. Sure, Iowa and New Jersey used high capacity rounds, which is U.S. high explosive, almost exclusively during Operation Hailstone, which is the attack on Truk Lagoon in which they sank a whole boatload of ships, but most importantly in which they sunk Katori, the training cruiser, Japanese training cruiser. And yes, Kirishima had Type 3 anti-aircraft shells and high-capacity rounds loaded when she stumbled into South Dakota and Washington. And yes, the U.S. basically didn't have an armor-piercing round for 5-inch guns, and the British barely had an armor-piercing round for their 6-inch rifles on board their cruisers. However, when you go and look at all of the major naval engagements that didn't happen as surprises, the overwhelming majority of them used armor-piercing. And again, I find this to be really the weakest argument for the reasons why high explosive proliferation are bad in this game. So let's look at it, what I think is the most compelling reasons why HE needs to be looked at again. Right now, in terms of game balance, armor piercing is criminally underused by cruisers, and there is a player skill and argument involved here. And I really don't want to hash this out too much because I don't want to really insult too many people, but there's a lot of people who don't even recognize that that number 2 key on their button and on their cruisers when they're playing their cruisers. Even the destroyer captains don't do this very often. And it's kind of frustrating. It's because the HE is so reliable at doing damage on ships that, in addition to the fires, that there's basically no reason to use anything else. I mean, there's no real reason other than, maybe occasionally getting a good salvo after you've lit them on fire 4 times to switch to AP. And that's a problem because you look at what AP is supposed to be. AP is really supposed to be that, this is going to sound wrong, but it's really supposed to be that skilled player's ammo choice. And by that, I don't mean to make that sound like if you don't use AP, you're not a skilled player. But basically, that round was the one that rewarded players for recognizing a ship's weak spots, the Citadel, and being able to use that round to maximize their damage potential. That is no longer the case. And this problem existed well before the Royal Navy battleships were ever in the game. It's not even a battleship related problem either. Yes, battleships, the last bastion of using, AP only, have even fallen victim to this. And the Royal Navy cruiser line wasn't the start of this. There are battleships in this game that basically only ever used HE. If you're one of those players who played Ishizuchi before she received some buffs, her HE still to this day is very potent. If you are one of the players that play Scharnhorst or Dunkirk, you know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of HE usage on those ships because of the shell caliber of the guns. Anyway, the problem with this whole thing is that AP is no longer capable of outstripping HE in terms of raw damage output. Outside of maybe a few select situations in which, like say a Des Moines facing off against another cruiser at close ranges and that cruiser's broadside, there's very little reason for ships to shoot AP at other ships. It's no longer able to do, the significantly high amounts of damage that it once was because HE simply is far more reliable, and you can't really angle against AP or against HE. I mean, you're pretty much always going to do damage with HE unless you hit an armor belt. By removing the skill out of this, we've basically watered down gameplay to the point where if you're a skilled player, or if you're somebody who recognizes the value in AP, you're not seeing any advantage in switching to it. And that, I think, is kind of a bit of an issue. Other people don't see it as such, obviously. But I don't know. Even if we look at just Citadel hit damage, the argument always comes up, well, HE, doesn't do as much damage overall. I tend to disagree. And the reason why I disagree is because all the ships that are part of this problem tend to have good fire chances or good rate of fire, however you wish to word that. And they can pretty much pick and choose when they're going to start fires based upon just, RNG luck and stacking all the skills that allow them to do large amounts of HE damage. And it doesn't matter if you get Citadel hits in a cruiser, because, again, HE damage is more reliable. Now, granted, I picked a battle video in which I'm using a French cruiser, and you can see I'm just not doing any damage. But you add in fires on top of this, and they say fire damage is, roughly equivalent to a Citadel hit. Okay, well, I can believe that. If that is indeed the true nature, the true amount of damage it does, and to be honest, I haven't looked at it, it is far more consistent and reliable for a cruiser to spam HE such that it starts fires, because as soon as I get one fire or two, there's a high probability that they are going to, switch to and damage control party it. And if they damage control party it, well, now I have to do, start another couple of fires. As soon as I start those, they're going to burn the full duration of the fire, or however long it takes for their damage control party to get back up. If it's a battleship, it's in effect, a Citadel hit every single time. And that's a pretty significant and substantial problem. I mean, there's no real fixing that. Yeah, but they can repair it all. Well, that argument only goes so far when you're talking about multiple ships firing at them. It is far easier for a ship to nose in and mitigate all the damage it takes from other sources by nosing in, especially if it's a battleship shooting AP at them. It's very hard for other ships to do any significant damage to them when they're nose in, when they're being shot at by AP. That's not true with HE. So HE, you no longer have the skill element there. So we not only are we not having our Citadels do a lot of damage, or however else you want to word that, it basically has penalized players for playing well. And the reason why is because when you make the correct ammo choice, you're not actually gaining anything. You don't gain anything by switching to AP. and so you're not getting, you're not getting kills, you're not getting, I don't know how else you want to word that, but you're just not getting any of the benefits. It's not what it once was. And it kind of creates this one-dimensional playstyle where HE is the ammo choice for everything. And that's playing out in all ship types, with the exception of carriers, obviously, but that is playing out in all ship types. I now see high-tier battleships, Yamatos and Montanas and Grosser Kurfürst, that all they do is spam HE, because AP isn't going to help them do any damage when that ship goes nose into you, you're pretty much guaranteed to get damage with HE. There's a slight chance you'll get nothing but bounces with AP. There's no way to mitigate HE damage. Now, there are those of us that were back in the closed beta days that remember what I would call the AP heyday, which is basically AP was disgustingly overpowered because there was not really any armor in the game. There were... also, it did damage when it shattered. It did spalling damage, so even if you didn't do any damage output at all, like you didn't penetrate, once armor came in, you still had spalling damage, so you always did some damage. It was like HE in that way, and it was really annoying because, again, there was no way that you could mitigate damage. It sounds awfully familiar. Anytime a shell landed anywhere near you, you basically took damage, and that's not what I want. That's by no means what I want. All I'm asking is that we shift this balance back towards AP being the better ammo choice for, most situations involving broadside ships, for most situations in which you need to do damage, whereas right now HE is just the quintessential shell. Now, I can hear some of you sitting back going, hey, isn't that basically a buff to battleships? If we nerf HE on cruisers and destroyers and battleships, isn't that basically a de facto buff on battleships? And the answer is absolutely, and it's not one that they deserve. Honestly, there needs to be an additional change to this. So let me propose the second part of this. If we take HE down significantly and significantly cut the chance of fires, or hopefully that, and bring down the chance of, bring down the HE alpha in addition to the reduction of fire chance, we really need to do something to bring cruisers back into competitive play. Now, here's my suggestion for that. Basically, we're going to concentrate more hit points in the superstructure of battleships. And that is going to annoy a lot of battleship players. It's completely justified. However, personally, I think that it's a change that needs to be made. What this is going to do is it's going to allow other ships to basically use AP when they're nose in to help do damage. That's one change that I would make. And that should help both cruisers and destroyers use AP when a ship is bow on and still do damage. The second change that I would strongly recommend is battleship HE and AP need damage nerfs. I would cut battleship HE down to basically about half. That might be a bit extreme, but like a good 30 to 35% down from where it currently is. Just flat lop off all the damage and call it a day. The other option that I would do with the AP, bring down the Citadel damage, because quite honestly, the Citadel damage is pretty freaking ridiculous too right now. All of this is going to do a couple things. One, it's going to make high-tier cruisers far more survivable. Two, it's going to fix the problem with battleship AP versus DDs, or at least mitigate it somewhat. And in increasing cruiser survivability, we're actually more likely to see more dynamic matches because cruisers are actually going to want to push because they're not going to get deleted the minute they get spotted when they're pushing up with their destroyers. And it also helps balance out US and Royal Navy cruisers a little bit. Anyway, those are kind of my ideas on HE proliferation. I hope that answers NoZoup's question. And let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't, and thanks for watching.